Hi folks, I'll keep this short because I made far too long videos of late. But there was this thing about sub-collections within sub-collections and so on. Sub-collections within your collection. Now I have a collection of folding slip joints, and within that I have a sub-collection of British folding slip joints. And within that I have this little sub-collection, and this is... these are Taylor's Eyewitness knives, and one could almost say there are sub-collections within these, but let's just not worry about that. I mean, for example, I have a small collection of these things. This is the two-blade Barlow, the single-blade Barlow, the lamb's foot, and the large lamb's foot with a synthetic handle. Now these are from the budget range of Taylor's Eyewitness. They're still made by the same guy, by Lee White, but they're not, they don't have the same sort of polish and so on, although I polished this one up. I spent quite a lot of time polishing that up, and in the end I just revealed some of the flaws in the grind of the blade. Which seems to be a quite common thing on the reverse side of these cheaper knives. They tend to end up with these ripples and towards the point. But I did make it rather nicer than it was, but it took an inordinate amount of time and effort. If you're prepared to do it, there's some reward in it. I mean, they're still closed-end knives like the other ones, and obviously I never polished that end. They're reasonably well made, but they're not made to the same standard as the Premier knives. Not by a long shot. I mean, he turns these out 90 to 100 on a good day. He's not doing that with the Premier knives. So there's those four, and the rest of them are all Premier knives, sort of. There is a sort of, for example, there are two. There's this one, which will predate the sort of era of Premier knives. So it's actually a very well made knife, but I think that was the standard quality previously, whereas now we have this sort of budget knives, Premier knives, and as you sort of take one of these and you add £100 to get the cost of one of these, so that's significant. But anyway, these are all Lee White knives. This mother of pearl was a very early one. The action on it is not as good as this one, where the action is absolutely brilliant, which is Desert Ironwood. Then these twin blade pen knives, there's 3 different patterns in there, but this is, I say, an older one. These are all the white ones. Again, more recent patterns and quite an early one. This one sat on the shelves in Bakewell Cookshop for a long, long time. Now they just don't sit there. This one here is a sort of half pruner, again in Desert Ironwood, which is very nice. This is a very recent one. Most of these also, almost all of them have worked backs. I'm not going to show you them all because there's videos on each of them if you're interested, but just to show this sub collection. Then we've got 3 lamb's foots here, one in Amboina Burl, one in really quite a nice Desert Ironwood, and one in a really good can't pick it up, ram's horn. Loads of colours in there, just lovely. That's really nice. And then you could say this is a sub-collection within the sub-collection, because this this drawer is all Barlows, and these are mostly Lee White Barlows. We've got the full Barlow, and slide that down a wee bit. We've got the slimline Barlows here, Mother of Pearl, Desert Ironwood, and Amboina Burl, 2 different oxhorn ones. One I bought new, and one was in a batch of knives that I bought. So I ended up, sorry, that's ram's horn. These 2 are oxhorn. The one of these, I think it was this one, I bought. Yeah, that one I bought as part of a batch. It's not the best quality. These ones are good with the worked back. This one here, as I say, I wouldn't necessarily have bought it if it was just on its own, because the fit and finish is not as good as it could be. I mean, it's all right. That's a nice knife, and for what I paid for it, because I bought the batch for less than I would have paid, for that knife on its own. So that was okay. This is an older one. The scales have obviously shrunk a little bit. I take it they're celluloid, not entirely certain. They're certainly composite. The blade centering, Lee wouldn't send out something with blade centering as bad as that nowadays. Fit and finish is okay, but it's not brilliant. But as I say, that was an earlier style. But what is interesting about that one though is that, unlike the newer slimline barlows, this has the stepped bolster, which is sort of trademark of the current Taylor's Eyewitness barlows. And then I've got these three are twin blade ones. I don't so much like the twin blade ones. I think they tend to be a bit hefty, but you can see when you look at these, look at the way that they're stamped, you can see that these have been done individually with a fly press as opposed to coming out of a machine, because you get, you've got some really deep nail nicks here, and then you've got some really relatively shallow ones on a couple of others. So you could call that inconsistency, or you could call that manual production, and I would prefer to call it manual production. This one is poplar wood that's been stained green. This one is just plain walnut. This one is, I think it's pear wood, either pear or cherry. It's one or the other. This is zircote wood, which has you'd think it was a composite. It's almost like shutterboard material, but it's a solid piece of wood that was grown like that. This one is stag from Woburn Abbey, which is in England. They have a safari park there, and a place I spent some time in my youth. I used to enjoy it. My grandparents lived nearby. This one is olive wood. I don't ever like olive wood. I always think it's a bit rubbishy looking, but that's just got a beautiful bit of grain in it. So when I saw that, I had to have it. And Boyna Burl, very, very nice. Now these two are interesting for odd reasons. I bought this one, though it's a plain back. I never buy plain back ones as a rule, but I bought this one because it's the best bit of desert ironwood I've ever seen. And on both sides, it's just, Matt also almost says Second Cypress was better. This one I bought, it was offered to me second hand, and I didn't realise until I got it what was so special about it. But this one, it's very well made. It's really well made actually, and it's a lovely bit of desert ironwood. A really, really nice knife. But it wasn't made by Lee White. It was made by his colleague Gavin Wright. The really sad thing about Gavin is he trained up. Well, he'd worked with Lee for when they first joined within a fortnight of each other. Taylor's Eyewitness 20 odd years ago, and then Gavin had left and gone to work somewhere else, and he came back to work at Taylor's, and Lee had trained him up on making Premier knives. And they train you up, and you're not allowed to sign them off yourself until you're deemed competent. So he made about 7 or 8 knives that he was able to sign off by himself, of which this is one. And then very sadly he died very suddenly, and so that they're all the knives he'll ever make, which is very sad. But I'm pleased to have one of his, and I'd love to have more actually. If anybody comes across any of the little letters signed by Gavin Wright, I shouldn't tell you, but I would pay more for that than I would pay for a Lee White. Not because I don't like Lee White, and Lee's knives are at least as good and probably better in most cases, but it's just that there's a uniqueness about this. Anyway, this is ox horn. Not so wild about that. I've never bought a buffalo horn one because I've never seen one that I really like enough to want to buy. And then these two are ram's horn. Again, I bought one with a plain back, which I tend not to do, but I bought it because it's just the best bit of ram's horn ever. It's just lovely colours. It's a bit plain on the back, but the front, it's just these striations in it, and the little red, which I assume are blood, but who knows. But they look really smart anyway. Then this is actually the second Taylor's Eyewitness knife I ever bought. It's also ram's horn, also very beautiful, but this other one just topped it. And the second Taylor's Eyewitness knife I ever bought is this one, which is mother of pearl. It's beautiful. It's mother of pearl. I have 3 mother of pearl Taylor's Eyewitnesses. This little slim Barlow, which again is just really, really, really nice. And the one from the other drawer. This one is interesting because it's not a perfect knife. The action on particularly the secondary blades is not good. And had it been full price, I probably would have sent it back because the blade's just the action is just weak. There's no, there's a snap to them opening, but there's no lock on them. And that, I think, is, and also the file work on the back is a bit mismatched. Just doesn't join up the way that it should. But this was a very early Lee White knife. This was made several years ago, and again, it had been sitting pretty much unloved on Taylor's on Bakewell Cookshop's website for quite a long time. The main blade has a good action to it. You can see the pins very clearly here, and the joints and the match up on the back isn't great, but main blades, very good action. I got it at a very attractive price, and as a result, really just because of how beautiful it looks, I couldn't let it go. Let's see if I can get those to snap without cutting myself. See, it's just there's no snap to that one at all, and perhaps that wouldn't be considered acceptable in such an expensive knife, but I got it for a price, and it is a beautiful knife. This one, there's the ironwood one, which is obviously it's much newer, has a really good snap to it on all the blades. The spay blades on these are quite awkward to open because they're quite thick, quite narrow, and they sit quite deep in the frame. But that's see, there's a good snap on that. That's a problem with the Stockman pattern in general, I think. Case ones are just the same. And if I tried that with my thumb, I'd cut myself with this one because it's sharp. But you can hear that there. There's a good snap on it. And this one I've carried quite a bit. The consequence of there's a downside to that actually with Stockman, in that because the blades are particularly the fret blade, the sheep's foot, and the main blade are very close together. If you're not careful when you open them, you can create blade rub where they don't actually touch, but you can very easily press the spay against the side of the main blade as you open it. But that's a lovely knife. It really is. Anyway, that's a sub-collection the biggest sub collection. I've got other sub collections. I've got a Japanese collection which I've just recently done a video on, and most knives, actually I missed two out. I hadn't really thought about it. There's a couple of other Falknevens, a U4 and the Embla, which are both Japanese made as well, although it hadn't dawned on me that they were Japanese made. It was only when I was doing the research for the TK3 that I realised it was Japanese, and it was only when I thought about it afterwards, the email I'd got from Falkneven said all of their knives are made in Japan. So I thought, so the U4 and the Embla should have been in that collection too. But anyway, there we are. That'll do for now, I think. That's my Taylor's Eyewitness sub collection. I do have other British, English-made knives, of which one could call them sub collections. For example, just as I'm before I put these away, I have these 5, all from another English maker who used to work for Taylor's Eyewitness and made Premier knives for them before he went out and set up on his own. Buying most of the tools and equipment he bought was from Trevor Ablett, and that's Michael May. And Michael has a bit of an odd reputation amongst knife buyers, because he has turned out some, well, let's face it, some really crappy knives. But that doesn't mean he is a crap knife maker, because he makes some really good knives. But you know, there are just occasions when he's just missed the target a little bit. But he made me 5, and they're all pretty close to perfect. I could argue that the stamp is a little bit weird on that. Can't see it there. On that the Barlow there, but I think he had a stock of these. It's the knife makers of Hallamshire, where Sheffield is. It used to be called Hallamshire. Crest, and that was one of the last few that he had. So if it was squint, it was squint, and that was that, I think. The rest are all brass bolsters. He does a lot of brass bolsters, which I suspect is a hangover from Trevor Ablett. This is a Trevor Ablett design. I've also got Stephen Cocker sub collection, and I have an Arthur Wright sub collection. I've got about 20 or so Arthur Wrights. I quite often buy them and give them to people, so you know, they come and they go. So these are most of my Arthur Wright collection. My current collection, these have turned over a bit more because I've sent a number of these away to people, partly because they're a wee bit cheaper than Taylor's Eyewitness ones, but more importantly, I think, because I do collect the Taylor's Eyewitness ones. These are a collection that sort of happened more by chance and circumstance than by deliberate intent. These 3 are not Arthur Wright knives. These 3 are by Stephen Cocker, also a Sheffield knife maker. His father worked with Trevor Ablett, and a lot of the equipment he has also came from Trevor Ablett. That's his Slim Barlow, his Barlow, and his Ettrick knife, which is a little Warncliffe blade. These are really nice knives, and I've done videos on all of those. So if you're interested in those, if you search Six Slices Stephen Cocker, you'll find him, and he also has a YouTube channel of his own. So if you look that up, you can find some of a couple of videos of him making knives. And if you go on Instagram, most of his knives are on Instagram, as are the Arthur Wright knives, Ashley Harrison's knives. Now these are a mixed bag though, because some of these I bought from the likes of Heine Haynes, I think it was this one of the peach pruners I got from Heine Haynes. So they don't, and this one I certainly bought from Heine. They don't do anything to check their knives before they send them out, and as a result, this knife, I should say, predates the Harrison era, but it's really badly put together. It's totally asymmetrical in its grinding of the hafting. The tail cap has a whopping great gap in it, but actually I still quite like this as a knife. It's just it's a working knife, and as a working knife and a hawk bill or a pruner, it's perfectly fine as a knife. It's just as a collection piece, it's just a bit there because it's just not nicely done. These, on the other hand, very nice bits of horn, just really nicely done. Even that horn obviously has a flaw in it, but that just comes over as a good pattern. These are nice collector's pieces. Beauty of these ones though is that they're pretty cheap. You can pick them up for relatively small amounts of money. That's his Ettrick. Again, that was just bought as a Heine Haynes purchase, and actually I think this is the Ashley and Michael Harrison era, because it is actually well put together. This is a pre-them era, and it's just not the best. And then I have a few that are one-offs. These are all just out the box retail knives. This one here is an Ashley Harrison commissioned knife, and it's really beautiful, really well done. Now it's a Senator, so this is one that he's done. This is a pre his tenure, and it's just not so well done at all. And then this one, which I'm not quite sure when this is done, the chisel work on the back is excellent. There is, though, a crack in the horn by the spring pin. Now, whether it went out the factory like that or not, I don't know, and I don't actually know when that was made. And this is another Ashley's own ones in snakewood, which is a really beautiful knife. Really beautiful, really lovely. And this spear point, which is interesting. Extra interesting, because it has what's it called, the candelabra stamps. Instead of Arthur Wright and Son, it says the candelabra is the W, and then on each one it says A and S, so Arthur Wright and Sons, with the W being the right. Now this one is an Ashley Harrison one. It's comes a much better polish on the blade. It's got a long pull instead of a nail nick, and it came sharp, which Harrison knives have a reputation for not being sharp. And then there's the rest of my English stroke Sheffield knives. They're some of them are Sheffield knives, some of them are English knives, and some of them are English in name only. So these are all Sheffield knives, by various makers: Rogers, Woolstenholme. Can't remember who that's by. No idea who that's by. George Butler. A couple of other English ones. I can't remember who they're all made by off the top of my head. I'd have to think about them, open them up. But these are ones I've just sort of picked up along the way, rather than having a great intent to collect. But they do fall into that category. These two are by a guy called Xing Chan, who is a Sheffield boy, or was born a Sheffield boy, but he now lives and works in Lancashire, I believe. But he produces some really stunning English slip joints in a modern idiom, but without going. These are not, for example, this thing here is a JE made in China slip joint, and it is a very high quality slip joint knife, but it's got these great big screws all over it, which many people like because they can take the knives to bits and they can clean them. Yeah, right. I like the pinned knives because I think they're cleaner and tidier. And so Xing is still in the pinned knives, but he's using paper micarta, and I can't remember what this one is, whether it's G10 or micarta, and stainless steel bolsters, and this one is S30V steel, and this one is 154 cm. So they're modern steels in a traditional shaped knife, although this one really is a Lanny's clip, which is a 1960s design of pattern. Now these three here, these two are by Whitby Knives, and which is an old English maker, but they are actually made in China, so they wouldn't really fall into this category. I just keep them here because there's a bit of space in this drawer. This one again, CK, the real lamb's foot, is, you know, purporting to be an English lamb's foot bladed knife, without actually the Warncliffe blade, but that's, you know, that's one of those things. And I just keep a few other things in this drawer simply because they kind of fall into the same sort of idiom as these, the JE made, and a couple of Chinese, I presume Chinese. I don't actually know where this one was made because it's not, the only mark on it is stainless steel. And this one, which is a Tomahawk brand, which is a Chinese made slip joint that Paddy gave me. Very good. I mean, for £5 you really get a lot of knife. And finally this one, just because it doesn't have a drawer that it fits into, it's a Boca Magnum, so it's Chinese made, and it's a lock back as well, so, you know, one could argue it shouldn't be in this drawer at all, but there it is. So that's the end of my English knife slip joint, plus a few bits that really shouldn't be there, but just they happen to live in this drawer. And that's a sub collection all in itself, and it's a better part of half an hour of a sub collection. Wow. Anybody that's still hanging around here, if you're still awake, please give it a thumbs up. And if this hasn't managed to put you to sleep, then you might enjoy some of my other videos, because most of them will be shorter. And if you want to see them, remember to subscribe and remember to ring the bell or you won't see them. Thank you very much. Bye.